Hi, today I'm going to carry on from where I left off last week. I was talking about photographing garden birds, the blue tits and great tits and wrens, etc. Now I'm going to talk about photographing small birds in flight. A friend of mine, Philip Newman, who lived up in Aberdeen in Scotland, unfortunately he died a few years ago, he was an expert at this. He was very successful at doing it, and I used to talk to Phil every week on the phone, and he would describe his setup to me, and it was remarkably simple. All he would do is put one post here for the birds to come and land on, and one single feeder, just a peanut feeder or sunflower seeds, and then he would simply pre-focus about here, manually focus, and then as the birds left this perch and flew across to the feeder, he's just hitting the button. And digital cameras at that time would have probably been taking about 8 frames per second. They've got much faster today, but his success rate was incredible. He would come away with half a dozen razor sharp pictures every time he did this. He might take thousands of pictures to achieve it, but he achieved it every time. Whenever I tried it, it never worked. First of all, the bird would be a little bit too far here, so it was out of focus, or too far forward, so it was out of focus. They were coming in at a slight angle. They'd be too high, they'd be too low. It just never worked for me, and I never got a single sharp picture out of many thousands. I used to try to modify the feeder. I'd put a bit of masking tape around the back so the birds didn't come in at an angle so much. Instead of filling the feeder, I would sometimes just put like 2 inches worth at the bottom. That would reduce the amount of times the birds flew too high. They would keep to the lower part of the feeder when they flew at it. But I just did not get successful pictures. And it used to be very frustrating. And I used to phone Phil up and he'd just tell me how easy it was. But eventually I did come up with a method for achieving these pictures, and that's what I'm going to show you now. I can't actually do the photography today. First of all, it's still in September, there's not enough birds coming in, just like there wasn't last week, and it's not sunny enough. If you're going to do small birds in flight, you do need a very fast shutter speed. We're going to be talking 4 thousandths of a second would be good for a blue tit or a grey tit, and it's just not sunny enough for that today. But I'll show you the setup and how it's done, and then show you some pictures I've taken in the past using this setup. So here it is. It's very simple. It's just a seed feeder, but put onto its side instead of vertically, and then I've got the lid off a plastic seed feeding container, cut a hole in the middle of it. I think I used a soldering iron initially just to melt a hole in the middle, and just pushed over the end of the feeder. And the idea of that is stopping the birds coming in from the back, and it encourages them to come at it dead straight as well. They're not likely to come at it at an angle. They've got to come straight, and they're coming to a very limited landing point. They do sometimes land on the top here, but then that's actually works out quite well, because when they go down, they often just go down like that, and you still get a picture. But it really does restrict the space that they occupy. They're very likely to be at the perfect height and not to the front or back of where you're focused. And my success rate went up a bit. I would still only get half a dozen pictures, the same as Phil used to get without trying, but at least I was starting to get sharp pictures, which I didn't do in the past. So that's it. The rest of the setup is exactly the same as before, apart from I've now got the post at about the right distance. The birds come in from that side because that's where the bushes are, so they usually come and land here first and then fly across. And you simply pre-focus at this point. You might put a stick in the ground here to focus on, then remove the stick. And you want as many frames per second as your camera takes, and you want around 4 thousandths of a second and upwards actually for small birds. You still have to take a lot of shots, but I say today I do get some sharp pictures of small birds in flight. Never used to be able to. We're now going to look at a few pictures that I've taken using this method over the years. They'll be taken with a range of cameras, starting off with my Canon equipment and more recently with the Olympus Micro Four Thirds system. If I was taking these pictures today, it would be with the Olympus M1X, and that can give me 60 frames per second. Now that does tend to mean you get the wings in the perfect position because you've got so many frames, but you still don't necessarily get it sharp. They can still be just beyond the point of focus or in front of the point of focus. but the success rate is far higher than any other method I've ever tried. I've had a quick look at the shutter speeds, and they vary from 2,500ths up to 8,000ths of a second. That long-tail tit is 8,000ths of a second. The ISO that I've used for these pictures would also be very variable, but today, shooting with the M1X, I would start off at 1,600 ISO and sometimes go up to 3,200 ISO. Modern cameras are so good at dealing with noise at high ISOs. The other advantage of shooting with a mirrorless system is there's no shutter noise, so you can have the camera just behind the feeder and photograph the birds as they're coming towards you. And this is an unusual picture. This robin is taken at 1/20,000th of a second, and look at the distortion in the wings. The great tit is 16,000ths of a second. I've never achieved these sort of shutter speeds before and never seen this effect. Thanks for watching.